The alien queen's scream echoed through the medical bay as another spasm tore through her spine. Purple blood seeped through the biomesh bandages wrapped around her torso, and her forearms trembled against the examination table. Dr. Marcus Chen had seen battlefield injuries, but nothing like the twisted vertebrae visible through the emergency scanner's holographic display. "The spinal column is completely displaced," he muttered, adjusting the diagnostic beam. "Surgery is the only option." Queen Veltar's amber eyes snapped open, fixing him with a predatory stare despite her obvious agony. "No male touches the sacred markings," she hissed through gritted teeth. "Only chosen mates may see or touch the Zephyrian royal spine." Marcus stared at the scan results. 3 crushed vertebrae, internal bleeding, and nerve damage that would leave her paralyzed within hours if left untreated. The debris from the asteroid collision had torn through her flagship's hull like paper, sending the Queen tumbling through twisted metal until her spine caught the edge of a support beam. "Your Majesty, with respect, you'll die without immediate intervention." He kept his voice steady, clinical. "The bone fragments are severing your spinal cord." Her royal guard, Commander Kithra, stepped forward. Her own injuries from the crash were severe, a deep gash across her scaled forehead and a clearly broken arm, but she moved with deadly precision. "Human, you will not defile our queen with your touch." "We have protocols. Your protocols don't account for emergency spinal surgery in deep space," Marcus shot back. "The nearest Zephyrian medical ship is 18 hours away. She has maybe 2. Queen Veltar's breathing grew labored. Her lower arms had gone completely numb, and Marcus could see the paralysis creeping upward through her nervous system like a slow poison. The biomonitors showed cascading organ failure as her body's electrical impulses failed to reach vital systems. "There must be another way," Kithra insisted, but her voice carried the first note of uncertainty Marcus had heard from the stoic warrior. "There isn't." Marcus pulled up the surgical plan on his tablet. "I need to realign the vertebrae and extract the bone fragments. It's delicate work, but I've done it before on humans. The anatomy is similar enough." The Queen's head rolled to one side, her consciousness fading. "The markings," she whispered, "sacred patterns burned into spine at birth." Only her words dissolved into another cry of pain. Marcus had read about the Zephyrian royal markings during his xenobiology training. Intricate patterns carved and chemically etched into the spinal bones of royal children, marking their divine right to rule. The process was part religious ceremony, part genetic modification, creating unique neural pathways that enhanced their natural telepathic abilities. To most Zephyrians, seeing these markings was like witnessing their most sacred mysteries, but sacred mysteries wouldn't save her life. "Commander," Marcus said quietly, "I understand the cultural significance, but you understand nothing." Kithra's hand moved to her weapon, then hesitated as she saw her queen's deteriorating condition. Purple foam bubbled from Veltar's lips as her respiratory system began to fail. Marcus made the decision for them. He activated the surgical restraints, locking the Queen in position, and began sterilizing his instruments. "I'm not asking for permission anymore. Court-martial me later if you want, but she lives." Kithra's blade whispered from its sheath, stopping inches from his throat. "Human, you will step away from our Queen." "Look at her," Marcus said without turning around. "Really look at her. She's dying right now while we argue about tradition." The guard's breathing was harsh in the sterile air. Marcus could feel her internal conflict radiating like heat, duty to protect her queen, warring with duty to preserve sacred law. The blade trembled against his neck. "Your Majesty," Kithra whispered, "give me guidance." Queen Veltar's eyes fluttered open one last time. She looked at Marcus, then at her loyal guard, and something passed between them. A moment of understanding that transcended species barriers. "He tends wounds," the Queen managed, "as mates tend each other." In this moment, her words faded, but her gaze remained fixed on Marcus with something that might have been trust. Or resignation. Kithra slowly lowered her weapon, but her amber eyes remained locked on Marcus with unmistakable warning. "If you violate her trust, human, I will personally ensure your death is neither quick nor merciful." Marcus nodded once, then activated the surgical field. "Understood, Commander!" "Now please step back and let me save your queen." The medical scanner revealed the full extent of the damage as he began cutting away the biomesh bandages. But it also revealed something else. Intricate golden patterns etched deep into the bone itself, more beautiful and complex than any artwork he'd ever seen. The sacred markings of the Zephyrian royal line, exposed to alien eyes for the first time in recorded history. And with them, the weight of an entire civilization's trust resting on his steady surgeon's hands. Marcus took a deep breath and made the first incision. The real test was about to begin. The surgical laser hummed as Marcus carefully separated damaged tissue from healthy bone. Each cut had to be perfect. One wrong move would sever what remained of Queen Veltar's spinal function forever. The golden markings seemed to pulse with their own inner light, following patterns that suggested both artistic mastery and biological purpose. "Fascinating," he murmured, steadying his hands as he worked around a particularly complex spiral pattern. "These aren't just decorative, they're actually integrated with the neural pathways." Commander Kithra leaned closer despite herself. "They enhance our queen's telepathic range and allow communication with the ancestral consciousness stored in our homeworld's crystal matrix." Marcus paused, absorbing the implications. These markings weren't just cultural artifacts. They were living biotechnology, possibly irreplaceable. The pressure of his responsibility doubled. "Can they be damaged?" he asked, using microforceps to extract a bone fragment embedded near a delicate golden vein. "If the primary nexus points are severed, or Queen loses her connection to the royal lineage, she would still live, but she would no longer be complete." The biomonitors showed Veltar's vital signs stabilizing as Marcus cleared the major debris. But the most dangerous part lay ahead, realigning the crushed vertebrae without damaging the intricate marking system woven through them. "I need better imaging," he said. "Can you operate the quantum scanner?" Kithra's training as a royal guard apparently included basic medical support. She activated the deep tissue scanner, providing Marcus with a three-dimensional map of every golden thread running through the queen's spine. "There," he said, pointing to a cluster of hairline fractures. "The main neural conduit is intact, but these secondary channels are compromised. If I can stabilize the bone structure and realign the channels..." His hands moved with practiced precision, using bone cement to rebuild the shattered vertebrae, while carefully preserving the golden patterns. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the medical bay's cool temperature. Every few minutes another system alarm would sound as Veltar's body struggled to maintain function. "Her brain activity is fluctuating," Kithra reported, monitoring the neural readouts. "The markings appear to be trying to compensate for the damage." Marcus could see it too, the golden patterns pulsing more rapidly, as if attempting to reroute signals around the injured areas. "This is like watching a biological computer system running emergency diagnostics on itself." "Remarkable," he said. "The markings are actually adaptive. They're learning to work around the trauma." 3 hours into the surgery, Marcus reached the critical moment. The final vertebra needed complete reconstruction, but it housed the primary nexus Kithra had mentioned, a complex mandala of golden threads that seemed to be the central hub for the entire marking system. "I have to completely remove this section to rebuild it," he explained. "For about 10 minutes, the queen will be completely disconnected from her ancestral link." Kithra's expression was unreadable. "That has never happened to a living royal in our recorded history." "Will it harm her?" "We don't know. The markings are installed in childhood. No adult royal has ever been separated from them." Marcus studied the nexus pattern, memorizing every curve and connection. "I'll work as quickly as possible. Monitor her brain activity closely." He made the careful cuts to free the damaged bone section. The moment it separated from Veltar's spine, every golden thread went dark. The queen's body went completely limp, and her brain activity flattened to barely detectable levels. "She's in some kind of neural suspension," Kithra whispered, fear creeping into her voice for the first time. Marcus worked frantically, rebuilding the vertebra with synthetic bone matrix while preserving every microscopic channel where the golden threads would reconnect. His hands flew through the procedure, muscle memory taking over as conscious thought became too slow. 8 minutes, 9. The final connection slid into place, and Marcus held his breath as he activated the bioelectrical stimulator that would restart the marking system. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, like sunrise breaking over a dark world, the golden threads began to glow. The patterns flowed back to life, pulsing in complex rhythms that seemed almost like breathing. Veltar's eyes snapped open, and she gasped as if surfacing from deep water. "The ancestors," she whispered. I could not hear them. It was silence. Complete silence. "But you're connected now," Marcus said, checking his readings. "The neural pathways are stable, and the bone structure is solid. You'll need time to heal, but the paralysis is completely reversed." Kithra was staring at the scanner display in amazement. The markings are actually stronger than before. The trauma forced them to create new pathways. Marcus began closing the surgical site, but his mind was racing. What he'd witnessed wasn't just successful surgery, it was evolutionary adaptation in real time. The Zephyrian royal markings had literally evolved during the procedure. Queen Veltar slowly flexed her lower arms, then her upper ones. Feeling had returned completely. She sat up carefully, testing her renewed mobility. "You have seen the most sacred secrets of my people," she said quietly. "You have touched what only chosen mates may touch. And you have given me back not just my life, but my connection to generations of royal ancestors." Marcus began cleaning his instruments, uncertain how to respond. "I'm just glad the surgery worked." It was more than surgery, human physician. Veltar's amber eyes held depths he couldn't fathom. "You tended my wounds as a mate tends his beloved. In our culture, this creates obligations." Kithra stepped forward. "Your Majesty, surely the circumstances, the Queen said firmly, "do not change the fundamental truth of what occurred here." Marcus felt the weight of something vast and culturally significant settling around him, but he wasn't sure what. All he knew was that everything had changed the moment he'd first touched those golden markings. And somehow he suspected his real challenges were only beginning. Queen Veltar stood with fluid grace, her restored mobility evident in every movement. The golden markings along her spine now glowed with soft bioluminescence visible through her regenerated skin, a sign Marcus hadn't seen before the surgery. "Commander Kithra," the Queen said formally, "summon the surviving members of my court. We must convene an emergency council. Your Majesty, surely rest would be..." "The council, Commander. Immediately." Marcus began packing his medical equipment, assuming his role was finished. The Queen's hand on his arm stopped him cold. Her touch was gentle, but unmistakably commanding. "Dr. Chen, your presence is required at this gathering." Within an hour, the refugee ship's largest compartment had been converted into a makeshift throne room. The surviving Zephyrian nobles, rescued from various escape pods, had assembled in a loose semicircle. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to barely contained outrage. "Fellow Zephyrians," Queen Veltar began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber, "our traditions have been both honored and challenged today. I live because Dr. Marcus Chen chose duty to preserve life over respect for our sacred laws." Nobleman Zekdar stepped forward, his scaled features twisted with displeasure. "Your Majesty, we are grateful for your recovery, but surely this human's violation of sacred protocol cannot be ignored." "Violation?" The Queen's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Are you suggesting, Lord Zektar, that my life was worth less than adherence to tradition?" "Of course not, Your Majesty, but the sacred markings have been exposed to alien eyes." "The ritual purity of your royal connection has been enhanced," Veltar interrupted. "The marking patterns are stronger than ever before. The ancestral voices speak with greater clarity. This human physician did not defile our traditions. He elevated them." Marcus felt dozens of alien eyes focusing on him. "Your Majesty, I simply did what any doctor would do. I treated a patient who needed help." "You did more than that," she replied. "In our culture, tending the sacred markings of another is an act of intimate trust, performed only between lifelong mates. You touched what no non-Zephyrian has ever touched. You saw what no alien has ever seen. And you preserved what countless generations believed could never be restored once damaged." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. "I didn't know. Knowledge does not diminish the act's significance," Veltar said gently. "In saving my life, you performed the most sacred duty of a royal mate." Lady Morvith, an elderly noble with elaborate ceremonial scarring, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this creates an unprecedented situation. Human anatomy is incompatible with Zephyrian reproduction. How can traditional mate bonds be honored?" "Perhaps," the Queen said thoughtfully, "it is time our traditions evolved to recognize bonds that transcend physical compatibility." The murmur that swept through the assembled nobles carried undertones of shock and fascination. Marcus realized he was witnessing a pivotal moment in Zephyrian cultural history. "I propose," Queen Veltar continued, "that Dr. Chen be recognized as my honored mate healer, not in the reproductive sense, but in the spiritual and emotional bonds that unite two beings who have shared life's most vulnerable moments." Lord Zektar's objection was immediate. "The royal lineage must continue. This human cannot provide offspring to secure the succession." "The royal lineage will continue through traditional means when appropriate," Veltar replied coolly. But the bond formed today transcends mere genetic continuation. This human has literally touched my soul. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the cultural complexities swirling around him. Your Majesty, I'm honored by your recognition, but I'm not sure I understand what this means in practical terms. It means, Commander Kithra said quietly, that you would share certain rights and responsibilities typically reserved for royal spouses, including the right to speak in council, to offer guidance on matters affecting the crown, and to receive the protection of the royal guard. It also means, added Lady Morvith with surprising warmth, that your actions today will be remembered in our historical chronicles as the day a human taught us that love and loyalty can transcend species barriers. The Queen approached Marcus, her movements formal yet personal. The choice is yours, Dr. Chen. You may accept this bond and become part of our people's story, or you may decline and be honored simply as the physician who saved a queen's life. Marcus looked around the chamber at faces that had shifted from suspicion to curiosity to something approaching acceptance. These beings had just watched their queen propose rewriting fundamental cultural laws to honor a bond created in a moment of medical crisis. What would my duties involve? He asked carefully. Serving as my personal physician and medical advisor, Veltar replied, offering counsel when requested, standing as witness to important ceremonial functions, and occasionally enduring the social complexities of being the first non-Zephyrian to hold such a position. The weight of decision pressed down on Marcus. Everything rational told him to politely decline and return to his normal duties. But something deeper, the memory of those golden markings pulsing with life beneath his hands, the trust in Veltar's eyes as she chose life over tradition, spoke to possibilities he'd never imagined. Your Majesty, he said finally, I accept the honor of serving as your mate healer. The formal ceremony that followed was brief but profound. Queen Veltar pressed her palm to Marcus's chest while speaking words in ancient Zephyrian that roughly translated to binding two spirits in common cause. When she finished, the assembled nobles offered gestures of acceptance that ranged from enthusiastic to grudgingly respectful. But as the ceremony concluded and the nobles began to disperse, Marcus caught sight of Kithra's expression. The commander's hand rested near her weapon, and her eyes held a warning he couldn't quite interpret. Something told him that acceptance from the court was only the beginning of his challenges. The political ramifications became clear within days. As word spread through the refugee fleet that their queen had bonded with a human, reactions ranged from celebration to outright revolt. Marcus found himself at the center of a cultural storm he'd never anticipated. Traditional Zephyrian factions demanded the bond be dissolved, while progressive voices hailed it as evolutionary progress. Messages flooded in from distant Zephyrian colonies, some expressing support, others threatening war if the sacred bloodline was contaminated. They're calling for a formal challenge of worthiness, Commander Kithra reported during a security briefing. 3 separate noble houses have invoked the ancient right to test your fitness as a royal mate. Queen Veltar's expression hardened. They dare question my judgment? They question whether a non-Zephyrian can understand our ways well enough to serve in such a sacred role, Kithra explained. The challenges are traditional, tests of wisdom, courage, and spiritual connection to our ancestors. Marcus set down his medical datapad. What exactly do these challenges involve? Combat trials, diplomatic negotiations, and communion with the ancestral crystals on our home world, Veltar answered. Tests designed to prove worthiness before the entire Zephyrian people. I'm a doctor, not a warrior or diplomat, Marcus protested. I wouldn't last 5 minutes in combat against a trained Zephyrian warrior. The challenges aren't about victory, the Queen said thoughtfully. They're about character. How one faces impossible odds reveals the truth of their spirit. Over the following days, Marcus found himself immersed in crash courses on Zephyrian history, philosophy, and combat techniques. Veltar personally tutored him in the complex diplomatic protocols that governed inter-house relationships, while Kithra reluctantly agreed to teach him basic combat forms. Your reach advantage might compensate for lack of natural armor, the commander admitted during a training session, but you'll need to rely on speed and unpredictability. Encouraging, Marcus muttered, dodging another lightning-fast strike from Kithra's practice blade. The real education came from Queen Veltar herself. During their evening discussions, she shared insights into Zephyrian culture that no human had ever heard. We are not as different as many believe, she said one night, showing him holographic records of ancient Zephyrian art. We value loyalty, courage, and wisdom above all else. Your species shares these values. But you've evolved beyond violence, Marcus pointed out. Humans are still struggling with basic concepts like universal peace. We evolved beyond unnecessary violence, Veltar corrected. When survival demands it, we are still capable of great ferocity. The difference is that we choose our battles wisely. Marcus studied her profile in the soft light of the holographic displays. The golden markings along her spine pulsed gently, and he found himself remembering the moment he'd first seen them. Intricate patterns of living metal that connected her to generations of royal ancestors. "Do you ever regret your decision?" he asked quietly, "bonding with someone so different?" Veltar turned to face him fully. "Do you regret saving my life?" "Of course not." "Then you understand my feelings." The bond between us was forged in a moment of pure trust. Cultural differences cannot diminish that fundamental connection. The arrival of the challenge delegation changed everything. 3 warships from the Zephyrian home system dropped out of hyperspace, carrying representatives from the most powerful noble houses. Their leader, Duke Carthon, requested formal audience with the Queen to present the challenges. "Your Majesty," the Duke said during the ceremonial meeting, "while we respect your sovereignty, the royal bloodline belongs to all Zephyrians. This human may have good intentions, but he cannot understand the sacred responsibilities of a royal mate." "Then test him," Veltar replied calmly. "Present your challenges. Let him prove his worth before all." Duke Carthon smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. "Very well. The first challenge will test his combat prowess against our champion. The second will test his diplomatic skill in negotiations with hostile parties. The third will test his spiritual connection to our ancestors. And if he fails?" Kithra asked. "Then the bond is dissolved and the human returns to his normal duties with no dishonor attached." "And if he succeeds?" Queen Veltar's voice carried a subtle threat. "Then the royal houses will formally recognize his position and offer their loyalty to your judgment." Marcus felt the weight of an entire civilization's expectations settling on his shoulders. 3 tests that would determine not just his personal fate, but potentially the future relationship between humans and Zephyrians. "When do we begin?" he asked. Duke Carthon's smile widened. "Tomorrow, Dr. Chen. Tomorrow we discover whether humans truly deserve a place among the stars." That night, as Marcus reviewed everything he'd learned about Zephyrian culture, Queen Veltar approached him with something he hadn't expected, a ceremonial blade inlaid with the same golden patterns that marked her spine. "This was crafted by the royal artisans," she said, offering him the weapon. "It carries a fragment of the ancestral crystals, allowing limited communion with past generations." Marcus accepted the blade, feeling its perfect balance. "You're giving me access to your ancestors' wisdom?" "I'm giving you the tools to succeed," she replied. "The rest depends on your courage and character." As he held the blade, Marcus felt a strange resonance, as if distant voices were whispering just beyond the edge of hearing. Whatever tomorrow brought, he would face it with the accumulated wisdom of Zephyrian royalty at his side. The question was whether that would be enough. The combat arena materialized from hardened energy fields as 36 Zephyrian nobles gathered to witness Marcus's first challenge. Duke Carthon's champion, a massive warrior named Vexmore, stood 7 feet tall with natural armor plates and forearms ending in retractable claws. "The challenge is not to the death," Duke Carthon announced, "but to honorable defeat or surrender. Both contestants will fight with traditional weapons until one can no longer continue." Marcus gripped the ceremonial blade Queen Veltar had given him, feeling its strange warmth against his palm. The whispered voices of ancestral spirits seemed to grow stronger as he stepped into the arena. Vexmore moved like liquid death, his forearms creating a whirlwind of strikes that forced Marcus into immediate retreat. The Zephyrian fighting style relied on overwhelming speed and multiple attack angles, something human combat training hadn't prepared him for. A clawed hand raked across Marcus's shoulder, drawing blood through his protective gear. He rolled away, trying to create distance, but Vexmore pressed his advantage relentlessly. "Yield, human," the champion called. "You fight with honor, but this contest is beyond your capabilities." Instead of responding, Marcus closed his eyes and listened to the ancestral voices whispering through the blade. Images flashed through his mind. Ancient battles, forgotten techniques, the accumulated wisdom of warriors who had faced impossible odds. When he opened his eyes, his fighting style had changed completely. Rather than meeting Vexmore's speed with speed, Marcus began fighting with patience. He used his longer reach to control distance, turning the arena's dimensions into an advantage. Every retreat was calculated, every counterattack precisely timed. The watching nobles murmured in surprise as the human began dictating the fight's rhythm. "Interesting," Duke Carthon observed. "He's learned to hear the ancestors' guidance." Vexmore's attacks grew more frustrated as Marcus continued to evade and counter. The champion's natural advantages meant nothing if he couldn't connect with his target. Marcus waited for his moment, an overextended strike that left Vexmore temporarily off balance. The ceremonial blade moved in a perfect arc, not to wound, but to disarm. Two of Vexmore's weapons scattered across the arena floor. The champion stepped back, breathing heavily, and looked at Marcus with newfound respect. "You fight like one touched by the ancestor spirits." "I fight like someone who refuses to give up," Marcus replied. Vexmore nodded slowly, then placed his remaining weapons on the ground. "I yield to your persistence and wisdom, human physician. You have earned this victory." The arena dissolved as the nobles processed what they'd witnessed. A human had not only survived against their greatest champion, he'd done so by embracing Zephyrian ancestral knowledge, but Duke Carthon's expression remained skeptical. One test completed. Two remain. The diplomatic challenge took place in a recreation of the Zephyrian Senate chambers, complete with holographic representatives from 12 different alien species. Marcus's task was to negotiate a trade agreement that satisfied all parties while protecting Zephyrian interests. "The Vorthan Collective demands exclusive mining rights to 3 Zephyrian asteroid belts," announced the lead negotiator, a crystalline entity that communicated through harmonic frequencies. "They offer advanced shield technology in return. The Keth Empire requires military assistance against rebel factions. They're prepared to share star charts to previously unknown systems." Marcus found himself juggling dozens of competing demands, each more complex than the last. The Zephyrian tradition emphasized finding solutions that honored all parties while maintaining royal dignity. Hours passed as Marcus worked through the intricate web of interspecies politics. He discovered that the key wasn't finding perfect solutions. It was finding solutions that allowed everyone to feel respected. "What if," he proposed finally, "we restructure these as multilateral agreements? Instead of bilateral trades, we create a network of mutual benefit where each species contributes their greatest strength to the collective good." The alien representatives exchanged communications in their various languages. Slowly, agreements began forming around Marcus's framework. "Impressive," Duke Carthon admitted. "You've achieved something our most experienced diplomats struggle with: unanimous consent among 12 species." Queen Veltar watched from the gallery with obvious pride. He sees connections where others see only obstacles. But the final challenge would be the most difficult. Spiritual communion with the ancestral crystals required Marcus to project his consciousness into a crystalline matrix that contained the memories and wisdom of every Zephyrian royal who had ever lived. "No non-Zephyrian has ever attempted this," Duke Carthon warned. "The experience can drive untrained minds to madness." Marcus approached the ancient crystal formation that had been transported from the Zephyrian homeworld. The geometric structures pulsed with inner light, and he could feel their power washing over him in waves. "Remember," Queen Veltar whispered, "the ancestors don't judge based on species. They judge based on the purity of your intentions." Marcus placed his hands on the crystal surface and felt his consciousness expand beyond physical boundaries. Suddenly he was surrounded by the spirits of ancient Zephyrian royalty, hundreds of voices speaking simultaneously in harmonies that transcended language. "Show us your heart," they seemed to say. "Show us why you deserve to guide our descendant." Instead of trying to speak, Marcus simply opened his memories to them. He shared his moment of decision in the medical bay, his determination to save Veltar despite cultural barriers, his growing understanding of Zephyrian values. The ancestral voices examined every aspect of his character, weighing his motivations and fears. Marcus felt exposed in ways he'd never imagined possible. Every doubt, every moment of courage, every act of compassion laid bare before beings who had ruled with wisdom for millennia. "You are not Zephyrian," they finally spoke in unison, "but your spirit honors the bonds that make us one people. You have our blessing, mate, healer of our daughter." Marcus's consciousness snapped back to his physical body, and he found himself surrounded by stunned Zephyrian nobles. The crystalline formation blazed with light brighter than anyone had seen before. "The ancestors have spoken," Duke Carthon said, his voice filled with awe. "They have formally accepted this human into our royal lineage." Queen Veltar stepped forward, her golden markings pulsing in harmony with the crystals. "Are there any remaining objections to my choice of mate healer?" The silence that followed spoke louder than any formal proclamation. Marcus had not only passed the challenges, he had fundamentally changed how an entire civilization viewed the possibilities of interspecies bonds. As he looked around at faces that had shifted from skepticism to acceptance to genuine respect, he realized his real journey was just beginning. The ceremony to formally recognize Marcus as royal mate healer took place aboard Queen Veltar's flagship, which had been repaired and restored to its former glory. Representatives from across the Zephyrian Empire attended, along with delegations from allied species who wanted to witness this historic moment. Marcus stood beside Veltar as the ancient words were spoken, binding him not just to the queen but to the entire royal lineage. The golden blade she had given him was formally blessed by the High Priestess, becoming a symbol of his unique position as the first non-Zephyrian to hold such rank. With this ceremony, the High Priestess declared, we recognize that wisdom and loyalty transcend the boundaries of species. Dr. Marcus Chen has proven that the bonds between souls matter more than the form those souls inhabit. But even as the celebration continued around them, Marcus sensed undercurrents of change that went beyond ceremony. His acceptance hadn't just altered his personal status. It had opened doors to possibilities that neither species had previously considered. What happens now? He asked Veltar during a quiet moment between festivities. Now we discover what the universe looks like when two species truly understand each other, she replied. Your medical knowledge combined with our technological capabilities could revolutionize healthcare across known space. Your diplomatic instincts could help us forge alliances that seemed impossible before. Commander Kithra approached with a formal datapad. Your Majesty, we're receiving communication requests from 17 different species who want to establish formal diplomatic relations. They're specifically requesting meetings with both you and Dr. Chen. Marcus felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. They want to meet both of us? They want to meet the human who passed Zephyrian royal trials, Kithra explained. Your success has established precedents that other species find intriguing. Over the following days, Marcus found himself thrust into a role he'd never imagined. As royal mate healer, he served not just as Veltar's personal physician and advisor, but as a bridge between human and Zephyrian perspectives on everything from medicine to philosophy. The first major test came when a plague outbreak struck a joint human-Zephyrian research station. Traditional treatment protocols weren't working, and both species' medical establishments were baffled. The pathogen seems to be specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in both physiologies, Dr. Sarah Kim reported via quantum communication. It's like nothing we've seen before. Marcus studied the data while Veltar consulted with her medical advisors. The solution came when he realized they were approaching the problem from two separate angles instead of working as a unified team. What if we combined human adaptive immunity techniques with Zephyrian bioresonance healing, he proposed. Create a treatment that uses both species' strengths simultaneously. The breakthrough that followed saved thousands of lives and established new protocols for interspecies medical cooperation. But more importantly, it demonstrated the potential of genuine partnership between civilizations. You're not just my mate healer anymore, Veltar observed as they watched the successful treatment being implemented across the research station. You're becoming a symbol of what our species can achieve together. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. I never expected any of this when I decided to perform surgery on an injured queen. Perhaps that's why it worked, she replied. You acted from pure compassion, without calculating the consequences. Sometimes the most important decisions are the ones we make without thinking. Their relationship had evolved far beyond the ceremonial bonds of their official positions. They had become genuine partners, challenging each other's perspectives and finding solutions neither could have reached alone. But their greatest test was yet to come. The crisis emerged from an unexpected source. A faction of human extremists who viewed Marcus's position as betrayal of his own species. They'd somehow acquired Zephyrian weapons technology and were planning attacks on diplomatic facilities across the galaxy. They call themselves the Human Purity Movement, Intelligence Officer Torres reported during an emergency briefing. They believe interspecies cooperation weakens humanity's competitive advantage. Marcus stared at the intelligence data in disbelief. They're willing to start a war over this? They're willing to commit genocide, Veltar said quietly. The intercepted communications indicate plans to use bioweapons specifically designed to target Zephyrian physiology. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. His success as a bridge between species had inspired others to try destroying those very bridges. We need to stop them before they can implement their plans, he said. How do we fight human terrorists while maintaining our alliance? Very carefully, Queen Veltar replied. One wrong move could shatter everything we've built. The solution required Marcus to do something he'd never imagined. Lead a joint human-Zephyrian strike team against members of his own species. The mission demanded not just military precision, but delicate diplomacy to prevent the extremist actions from poisoning interspecies relations permanently. As their ship approached the terrorists' hidden base, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. 6 months ago, he'd been a simple ship's doctor. Now he was commanding a multi-species military operation to preserve the peace he'd helped create. "Ready for insertion," Kithra reported from the pilot's station. Marcus checked his weapons and medical kit one final time. Whatever happened in the next few hours would either solidify the human-Zephyrian alliance or destroy it completely. "Let's finish this," he said. The battle was swift and decisive, but its aftermath would resonate across the galaxy for generations. When human and Zephyrian forces fought side by side to stop human extremists, it sent a message that cooperation was stronger than division. Standing in the ruins of the terrorist base, surrounded by beings who had once been strangers and were now trusted allies, Marcus finally understood the true meaning of the bond he'd accepted. He hadn't just become Queen Veltar's mate healer, he'd become a catalyst for evolution. Proof that intelligence and compassion could transcend any boundary the universe might place between sentient beings. The golden markings on the blade at his side pulsed with warm light, and for a moment he could swear he heard the ancestral voices whispering their approval across the vast distances between stars. His journey had begun with a medical emergency in deep space. It had become something far greater, the first chapter in a new kind of galactic civilization where species stood together instead of apart. And as Queen Veltar took his hand while they watched the sunrise over an alien world they were helping to heal, Marcus knew his real adventures were only just beginning.